family, man. This is the NYC Train Edition. Out here with RedPill, man. We giving them a tour of New York. We wanted to switch it up today, man.
Got to keep it authentic.
Yeah. Give it a tour of New York. See how the train go by, y'all. But listen, Red. I've been seeing, on Instagram, people sharing this meme with of Genesis 15:13. And it says, then the Lord said it to him, know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own, and that they will be enslaved and mistreated there. I'm also hearing people talk about how Trump signed HR 1242, and that establishes the 400 years of African American history commission to develop and carry out activities throughout the United States to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the arrival of Africans in the English colonies at Point Comfort, Virginia in 1619. So we in 2019.
400 years. 400 clip.
We also know that reparations have been a hot topic at this time. We also know that the ADOS movement is booming at this time. And they're making a lot of noise to the point where they're affecting the whole Democratic Party.
Fact.
To the point where
changing the narrative.
They Angela Rodham almost tried to hijack the whole reparations narrative and act like they were all for it when they know damn well they were all against it.
That's right.
So we seen them all go on the Breakfast Club. We talked about that. But let's talk about, the evolution of religion and biblical prophecy. ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery. Are we the Hebrews talked about in the Bible? Are we the people that the Lord, that this Genesis 15:13 is talking about, my brother?
Well, it ain't no Mexicans. No offense, I'm just saying, I feel wholeheartedly that description and that term and that passage is definitely speaking about the brothers and sisters who came at the bottom of the slave ships, who were prisoners of war in Africa and were taken into the Americas, along with the people who've been enslaved in the Americas and were shipped to Europe and to, because the first slave trade started here in the Americas, the reverse slave trade, and then later on we have what we know as the transatlantic and whatnot. So yeah, I do feel like that's referring to our people, quote unquote black people in America, American descendants of slaves.
So if that's referring to us and we are the Hebrews, I mean, it seemed like we would gravitate toward Islam, we would gravitate toward Christianity. We pretty much will gravitate toward a whole lot of doctrines before we gravitate toward to the Hebrew doctrine. That's like one of the last doctrines that our people seem to gravitate toward. There's 5 other doctrines ahead of that. Why do you think we're so far removed from our Hebrew origin, if that's the case, my brother?
Well, I know for sure that we gravitate closer towards a Christianity or a Christianized Roman Catholic and a Baptist ideology because of the conversion that took place. There was a mass conversion. There was an active conversion that was taking place from the standpoint of the conquistadors, the crusaders, the quote-unquote missionaries, and all of the people who were pushing organized religion on our people and going into the continent and converting Africans into Christians. You see that when you see the kings, the Alfonso kings in the Congo, okay, by way of the Portuguese. You see that in when they went ahead and they began to Christianize West Africans and Senegalese and take them out of their Islamic names and put them into their Christian names. You see that along the Pepper Coast, Ivory Coast, Gold Coast, all of these different coasts where the Europeans, by edict of the Roman Catholic Church, it was called the Crown and the Church, and the Roman, the Pope, he created a doctrine called the Holy papal bulls. The papal bulls gave the power. The papal bulls gave the power of the Roman Catholics to conquer in his name and to spread Christianity with the sword and with the book. So they would basically pull up to these places like the Aztec Empire and places in Africa, and they would basically read their edict, and basically their edict was either you would convert or you go to the stake. You'll get burned at the stake, which they call the auto de fe. Auto de fe is basically a bonfire where they were burning people by the hundreds and thousands at the stake. That whole thing about Jesus being nailed to the cross and whatnot, this was a torture tactic that the Inquisition or the Inquisitors and the quote-unquote Crusaders were implementing all around the planet. It's called auto de fe. They would burn people in bonfires and they would burn them at the stake. And they would basically take the chiefs of the villages and torture them and sacrifice them and, hang them or quarter them, cut them in 4 pieces, chop them up, shoot them up, do all kind of torture tactics. Go and Google torture tools of the Inquisition. So I'm not just shooting from the side of my neck. This was actual. There's a museum in Spain, a whole museum. It's in Spain and it's in Latin America of the torture tools that they use to convert thousands and thousands of people. You have in North America conversion schools. You had in America where they took the quote-unquote Native Americans and they Americanized them or they Christianized them. In the Caribbean, when I was in St. Croix as a child, the missionaries and the nuns and whatnot, they would beat you with rulers to basically, inside of their schools, to make you convert and make you conform and make you, just go with whatever they were trying to sell you. So I think that our people have been discouraged from the Hebrew faith for many different reasons. One of the main reasons is because of the language. Rest in peace to all of the brothers and sisters who lost their lives in that Ethiopian plane crash. But the Coptic Ethiopians, the fact that if you get into their language, the Aramaic and whatnot, and you're able to read these holy texts and things of that nature, they could unlock mysteries that have been inside of those texts. Because remember, when these quote-unquote holy books or these texts or these scrolls were interpreted or translated into English, a lot of things were lost in translation. So they don't want us to invoke this original tongue. They don't want us to know about mysticism from a Kabbalah standpoint. They don't want you to know about the true Hebrew faith and whatnot. So that's being, that's not encouraged. That's highly not encouraged. And even when it comes to brothers and sisters learning about Islam, they don't want you to learn anything about melanated involvement in Islam. They don't want you to know Moorish history. They don't want you to know about the Umayyad dynasty. They don't want you to know about none of that. They're giving you Islam from an Arabic post-Ottoman, perspective, and that's not real. Like that's not holistic.
So is there? We often hear about the Moorish history in the Americas. How do the Moors tie in with the Hebrews? Well, there has to be some type of connection.
There's when you go and do your research, there was something called the capitulation of the Moors and the capitulation of the Jews, where they were exiled and capitulated. They were kicked out of. This was the deal. Going back to what I was talking about, of the Moors, the capitulation of the Jews and whatnot took place in the Iberian Peninsula, and this was the deal. Go and research it. It's in the 1600s and whatnot. A lot of laws, a lot of edicts and whatnot. This is when they began to enslave them. This is when the torturing started. It didn't start then. It started during the quote-unquote Reconquista, the reconquering of Europe by Christendom. And when I say Christendom, I mean all of these different nation states, which were not even nation states at that time. France, Spain, Portugal. They all came together under one umbrella called Christendom, and they went to war against the united different Islamic nations, and the Jews who were aligned, who were working and fighting and, you know, in alignment with them. After they lost the war, they put all of these laws on them, similar to Jim Crow laws, similar to Black Codes law, and they capitulated them. So the agreement was, if you want to stay, you have to go under conversion. You have to convert to Christianity. So when you do the research, you see a lot of Muhammad's, Ibn, and all of these other names changed to Alfonso, Eduardo, Guadalupe, you know what I mean? They start flipping the names and giving them these Romanized, they call them Romanized names, Anglicized, Anglo names, they anglicize them. So they give them these titles and these names. So when you study in history, they'll write about somebody from an anglicized name, similar to how some of us have nicknames. So they'll be speaking of somebody from an anglicized name, but at the whole time, he was a Muhammad Mustafa Ibn but you're reading some super duper Europeanized name and you think that that's a European, and that's not necessarily who it is. So the agreement was, during the capitulation, either you convert or you have to leave. Now when you left, now we're talking about anybody who's visited Spain, anybody who's visited any of the old Moorish province, and you know, the place where the Moors lived and whatnot, Cordova, Alhambra, these are castles, these are plush areas. They had to leave behind all of their belongings. They had to forfeit their land, right? This is how they were able to acquire land. They did the same thing in the Americas when they began to remove the quote-unquote natives and the Indians off of their lands in Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, and they let the immigrants from the second wave of immigration of Europe come over. That's why you have the majority of immigrants are from Germany and America. Go and do the research. The majority of Europeans are Germans in places in the Midwest and shit like that, like Kansas. Like, what are they doing over there? They came in as refugees and they took over the land of people like us. Oklahoma, that's how they started the Trail of Tears, because they moved them from the Trail of Tears off of their indigenous land. This is how we get Black Wall Street. They marched them into Oklahoma, and then those brothers and sisters got together and created, on those 40 acres of land, what we know as Black Wall Street. But during the capitulation, they had to leave behind all of their wealth, all of their land, all of everything, and get on boats and go, and they were exiled. Now, when they was exiling them, they were also killing them on sea, meaning that they had ships and whatnot. They were basically, you know, when they left, they was running down on them, sinking the ship, you know what I mean, jumping on board. You know, the pirates was killing people and all of this stuff. So when you do the research on the Jews that are in Nigeria, when you do the research on the Jews who are in Cape Verde, right, the Cape Verdean Jews and whatnot, they call them Lanados, right? When you do the research on the black Jews who are in places of Africa, they will talk about the fact that they were exiled from their land. They were pushed out of their homeland and they were put into these new places. So these are the quote-unquote black Jews who were capitulated along with the Moors, along with a lot of, because when you do the research about who was being enslaved and taken to the Americas, it was the same it was the same ethnic group who was capitulated from Spain. The Senegalese, this is the Almohad and the Almoravid empires. These are dynasties who came out of West Africa. These are the mystics. These are the Sufis and whatnot. This is the dynasty that replaced another dynasty that was there fucking up. So when they sent them back to Africa during the conquest, when the Europeans began to now travel, they were continuing their war, they were continuing their murder campaign, and they were going into these same places where these people were on the run. They were considered refugees, and then they went into these areas and began to enslave them and subjugate them even more by utilizing other tribes who were not they were not allies of said African tribes. So they were giving them all of these trinkets and whatnot, and they ran down on them. And this is how wars fought. This is how chess is played. I mean, so.
All right, Red, we continuing right here. We in Fulton Street, Brooklyn, for the family that want to know. Fulton Street, Manhattan, I'm sorry.
Yes.
But you could continue, my brother. You was going in hard,
So
my brother.
I was just, giving a historical context about the fact that we had brothers and sisters, of a melanin African origin inside of Europe, but we also had what is known as the Sephardic Jews and whatnot. They were kicked out as well. These same Sephardic Jews and whatnot, the ones that you see with like curly hair, features that would consider like Jews with afros, people like that. Those were the ones who were persecuted centuries later by Adolf Hitler, who said that he wanted to continue the capitulation and the cleansing of a certain kind of ethnicity or group of people out of Europe, period. Not just Germany. He was trying to capitulate them off of out of the whole continent. So you see in Jamaica, you have, you see in like other places, and this is the whole Irish, the Irish are in Jamaica heavy, and that's not because of the capitulation. Some of that has to do with piracy and things of that nature, and the fact that, a lot of Europeans were moving around with the pirates, with what they call the corsairs or the privateers and whatnot, and they were making landfall in the Caribbean. Some of these privateers and some of these corsairs were going against the crown. If you see the movie Pirates of the Caribbean with Jack Sparrow, Jack Sparrow having locks. Even though it's quote unquote six ether, he got gold teeth, locks. He's an olive complexion and whatnot. He's not necessarily a blue blood. He's going up against the crown. He's going up against quote unquote the British Empire. He's going against them. He's a renegado. He's rolling with different renegades, different people and this period that I'm talking about with the corsairs and the privateers, the quote unquote piracy era. That's like 1700s, 1800s. If you go and look into the Barbary pirates or the Barbary wars or the Barbary coast, Hotep, peace, all right, Hotep. You know what I'm saying? Come here real quick, my brother, if you can. Okay, you gotta go. All right. So that's what I'm referring to. But because I want to dispel the myth that wherever you see Europeans pop up in different lands, that they only, because people give them too much credit. Oh, they were our colonizers and they conquered us. No, they didn't. No, they didn't. Some of them were visiting. Some of them had visas on your land. You know what I'm talking about? They didn't have the power to conquer you. So, you got to get off of that. Too much victimhood consciousness and too much, everybody is, they're doing their ancestors a disservice by being so goddamn subservient whenever they tell their history from a place of a loser. And I don't identify with that. My DNA doesn't resonate to conversations like that. We were, my bloodline, we didn't operate like that. You know what I'm talking about? We didn't gravitate towards, being conquered and stuff like that. So I don't relate to that shit.
So Red, since this passage, Genesis 15:13, they say the Bible's a book of prophecy. Not one of history, but one of prophecy.
Yes, they do.
Does that mean time's up for white supremacy? Does that mean what we seeing Donald Trump is the sign? The man that's known as the most racist president in modern times, the man that signed the 400-year HR, you know what I'm saying? Is this the
Farm
sign?
Bill, urban renewal, few Billy to the hood.
Is this a sign? Is it a divine sign that regardless of how fucked up we are, Red, logically we can't see it, but it's going down?
I would say, I can't point to 2019 as being the marker. We would have to take a more concerted approach to summing up our last 100 years, okay? So when you really look, if you want to take a bird's eye view of the last 100 years and the contributions that melanated brothers and sisters from the Caribbean, from the African diaspora, and from the soil of the Americas, North, Central, South, and the Caribbean, you will see that our people were definitely beginning to turn things around. If you take a concerted effort and look at the 1800s, when our people were considered black Republicans, if you go and look at the 100 plus inventions by quote unquote black people who were still dealing with Jim Crow, still dealing with, the remnants of chattel slavery and things of that nature, you would see that our people were beginning to come into their own back then. I call it the 100-year dynasty. If you would take a concerted effort and look at 1919 and then 2019, what happened in 1919? Noble Drew Ali came on the scene. Marcus Mosiah Garvey comes on the scene. Frederick Douglass is on, there's movement taking place. Casper Holstein, bringing numbers and whatnot. He's from St. Croix. He brought the numbers game, which turned into the lottery. You got the brother, who's the brother from St. Croix who helped Garvey. He was the editor of the paper that Garvey comes to write. You know what I mean? This brother from St. Croix, I'm forgetting his name, pardon me. Anybody put it in the comment section who knows his name. He's a legend, this brother who came from the Virgin Islands and whatnot. You have the rise of, you got the rise of black intellectualism and whatnot. There were black newspapers being written. You got Black Wall Street. You know what I'm talking about? You have Elijah Muhammad bringing forth the Nation of Islam. You have, quote unquote, the inception of the Hebrew Israelites with their beginnings and whatnot. You got the Canaanite temple. You have all of these, because remember, this is the myth of Hiram Abiff. He's buried in a shallow grave, meaning that the nigga is dead. You understand? The nigga is a walking dead zombie. So the only thing that will change him from his lowly state is to receive the light, because he's dead because he has no light. The light has been snuffed out of him and whatnot. And when the lights go out, that means that knowledge and history, that means that your heritage, your tradition, everything, your culture, your language, all of these things are being hidden from you. So you're walking around in total darkness. You don't know who you are. You have no connection to you. Remember, we were what was the shit? When you speak multiple languages, we were scientists, we were engineers, we're creatives. Case in point, going back to what I was saying, if we were doing all of these inventions in the 1800s and niggas are so deep and woke today, where's your inventions at? You're not even making apps. Where's your inventions at? You don't have the same foot on your neck that they had in the 1800s. Where are your inventions? You mean to tell me that man stopped inventing? That's a lie, because all around the world they're inventing to this day, right now. You understand? But, our people we stopped doing that. So there's been consecutive waves of when our people woke up, and then what did they do? They went and put us right back to sleep. Look at what happened with the heroin epidemic and whatnot. Who was responsible for that, right? The Italians were responsible for that. Lucky Luciano was responsible for that, alongside the CIA or the American government, who basically got him out of jail, pardoned him, set him up in Italy, and allowed him to create what is known as the French Connection and things of that nature. This is around the end of the Second World War. This is prior to crack. Crack is, people talk about the crack era and what it did, but they don't talk about what the heroin, the first wave of dope, the opium, what that did to the hood. That broke the foundation. The crack shit just cleaned them up later on. You feel what I'm saying? Peace, King. When you look at our condition, when you look at our plight, when you look at, what Claude Anderson has predicted, that we'll be, considered fourth-class citizens, the proverbial bottom of the totem pole. But then at the end of the day, when you look at the rise in consciousness, when you look at the woke movement, when you look at ADOS, when you look at the multiple different groups, the Nation of Islam is still strong. The Hebrew Israelites is an army unto themselves. The Moors, all of the different groups that they represent, they have numbers. So if you take a concerted effort and really look at mentally where our people are at, you know, light-wise, are we receiving the light that the ancestors are sending to our people in this 400 years? And so, like I said, it's been going strong for 100 years. 1919 to 2019. We've been seeing movements, even though they took out the messiahs, it does not stop the messianic force. If somebody were to say that there's not a messianic force inside of the black community, they'd be a goddamn lie. There's a messianic force, unlike any messianic force that I've seen in history, that it is dwelling in the hearts and minds of our people. What's stopping it from going full blown? Fear. You know, the uncertainty that people have of doing something new, because niggas is still looking for in books to get reference points on if they turned up or if they really turned this shit into what it's supposed to be, what it would become. You're not gonna find that in the book because, like we're pointing out, this is the end of a certain kind of era. Your lights were out for 400 years. Now you're supposed to be turning them back on. So when you see the condition of the country, especially with the president, the fact that we've been gifted somebody who's so blatant and so outwardly, you know, racist, and overt, that in it of itself speaks to the condition of these people who would try to go on record and say that they're the chosen one, or they've been chosen. No, you haven't. Look at your condition. You can never point fingers at the condition of our people, even in our lowly state, when you look at the condition of these mass murderers, these fragilicists, these inferiority complex, these quote-unquote oppressors who've been going all around the world killing in the name of both their God and this dollar and, you know, the principles of, you know, white supremacy, if that even, whatever that means or whatever that is. You know, I call it white fragility and whatnot. So if you're biblical or if you're into the holy book, you don't need a tutor. You don't need somebody to reinterpret those pages to understand who you are and who they are. The haves and the have-nots. The cursed and the cursed. You understand? The synagogue of Satan and God's chosen children. Who do you identify as? And if you identify as such, what are you doing to fill the shoe, to fit the role?
You know,
because where we're at right now is you got the chosen people, or quote unquote those who consider themselves chosen, assimilating and trying to be like the Romans. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So you're never going to be able to break the spell if you're trying to be, you know, if you're trying to be like something that you're not. You understand?
Indeed. No, brother, no.
Not right now.
No, brother, no.
Yeah, not right now, brother. Because we got to do the interview.
Please. All right, so in reference to ADOS, American Descendants of Slave, and or just the blacks here in America for 400 years, since we're talking about this 400-year anniversary of us coming here from Virginia in 1619, Bobby Hemmett used to, go ahead.
I just have to put on the record, because we may forget this, that there goes the irony once again on the 400-year marker of this whole thing that started in Virginia. The governor of Virginia right now is somebody who refused to step down because he was shown in blackface alongside somebody in a Klansman robe, right? Who graduated from a medical college. This is what they do in a medical college in the 80s. It wasn't like an old yearbook from the 60s. The yearbook was in the 80s. He said that he did blackface of Michael Jackson before. But he doesn't know who this person in the yearbook was. I just had to put that on the record that in Virginia, right now, the same place where the curse started, their governor who's over the lives, he's hovering over the lives of millions of melanated people. He was in blackface.
I'm glad you pointed that out, my brother. So, like I was saying, the brother Bobby Hemmett would say that the so-called African Americans have a unique bloodline from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Because of the mixing with the tribes and the nations or whatever.
They're a new species.
Yeah, they're a new species, unlike any other. Could you talk to me about that? The African American being a new species, different from any other people on the face of the earth. If you agree with what Brother Bobby
I do agree with what Bobby said. When you look at how species are created, right? And you take a concerted effort to look at this species of quote-unquote African American, we are the newest species on the planet. We are an admixture of different nationalities, Aboriginal, indigenous, quote-unquote what they call Indians, right? Copper tone complexion, whatever you want to call it, that's one bloodline. Then you have brothers and sisters from West Africa, Benin, Congo, Senegal, Ghana, and other places on the continent. You got that. But then you have the quote-unquote Irish bloodline. Then you have the quote-unquote Nordic bloodlines. Then you have the Germanic bloodlines and the Frank bloodlines. Those are mixed into the bloodlines. Then you have the Dutch, whatever bloodline they represent. You know what I mean? These are like what Nordics, right? Like the Nordic bloodlines and whatnot. You have that running through the bloodlines of a lot of people because, you know, as been pointed out before, there was a lot of rape taking place. There was something called breeding farms. You feel me? They said that every night the quote unquote slavers or the planters or the plantation owners would take advantage of black women, of our sisters, our mothers and aunts and things of that nature. And, you know, many of these women were impregnated and the children were seen as cargo. The children were seen as, you know what I mean? They were commodities. So there was a lot of breeding that was taking place. So that admixture of different bloodlines, and this was something that was forbidden prior to this exercise. Our tribes were forbidden to mix our blood with what were known as inferior tribes. They looked down on mixing blood with the European, even when he came into Africa. That wasn't something. They wasn't running to get knocked up by some dirty ass pirates who was hopping out of ships, breathing on people and killing them. The germ man, the man with the germs, breathing on people and killing them. You know, bragging about hitting sheep and whatnot. You know, Tinder dates with sheep and cows and horses and dogs. Like nobody was checking for them like that. So their bloodline wasn't looked at something that our women were even genetically drawn to. Nobody was trying to get an Obama back in the days. You understand?
It wasn't popular like it is now. A little mixed baby.
Well, all of that came with the complete propaganda of the scientific community, with the whole eugenics run, Darwin. It took all kind of propaganda to somewhat break our people to where we would be talking about we want a baby with good hair, knowing that hair's weak. You feel me? If it's not completely super strong like the non-ether, knowing that if you mix the bloodlines, because we had something going back to the Ethiopian thing. Why would an Ethiopian who has a bloodline tie with Selassie, who has a bloodline tie with Menelik, who could trace their blood to Solomon, why would they sleep with somebody who came out of the caves with Europe, who got no bloodline? There was no royal family over there. There was nothing to. It's like when you come together and you're equally yoked. So if I see me as being royal, I come out of a village in Africa, nigga, we dripping, we royal. You know what I'm talking about? We're recognized by all of the other kingdoms, and to dispel any kind of misinterpretation about what these kingdoms were about, I'm talking about kingdoms of gold. I'm talking about kingdoms that were put together with a mathematical principle that you niggas can't even solve with your Texas Instruments to this day. So I'm just trying to say that it wasn't savages. It wasn't savage villages of mud huts and shanty towns and all of these other things. These were places that were highly advanced. So people coming out of those places, they look down on the European. You're not mixing with them. So when they broke, when they went, but that necessarily didn't, fare for a lot of the men. And we talk about that as well. When the African men would travel abroad, they were doing a lot of breeding, okay? They were breeding everywhere that they went, because that's how you spread your seed, that's how you spread your empire, that's how you spread your kingdom, that's how you do it like that. But it's not, the woman was not responsible for doing it. It was the men, the African men were going around into Hawaii, into North America, into different places prior to slavery, spreading their seeds and whatnot. So when that happened on the sex farms and this new race of people were created, even when you look at the Latin America, those were new races over there too. Because when the conquistadors went over there and they began to massacre and they began to genocide their people, they massacred most of the men, and they began to end the conquistadors, the Spaniards, began to impregnate many of the local women, and they created a new breed of Spanish people. You know what I mean? And then they gave them their names. They gave them their religion. They Christianized them. They Roman Catholics. They made them Roman Catholics. You feel me? And they gave them Spaniard names, and they gave them a tongue, and they gave them Jesus. That's how that happened. So there's a whole new species of people over there in the quote unquote Americas, South America, Central America, Latin America as well. The mulattoes that were created in Haiti, the mulattoes that were created on the islands and whatnot, those are new races, those are new species of different bloodlines, a trifecta. The African, the Aboriginal of that land, and the European, bottom line. And a lot of these people have internal struggles and issues, because think about it, you got competing bloods, you got competing DNA in your veins. Who's talking to you in your head? Is it your white part? Is it the European blood, or is it the African blood? Who's in control? Who's driving the ship? Because you might have that DNA of all of those. I went on record the other day and said that my father did a DNA test, and these lames trying to act, RedPill, you know that's not accurate. Nigga, I said my father, he's the guinea pig. He did it on his own fruition, right? And then he showed me the results, and I know it's not all the way accurate. For y'all who say that it's not accurate, I agree with you. As we move forward, we're gonna get into the genome. As science upgrades and it moves further, we're going to be able to break down our DNA from a genome point. But until then, that's what he showed me. And when he showed me his results, it had European blood. But when we say European blood, what if there was a black person from Britain? Because there was brothers and sisters, there was Moors that were over there from time immemorial, from Hannibal's days. You know what I'm saying? We was the Danes, the Picts, the Scots. We was over there. The British Empire, like we were over there. So even if they show Irish blood, or even if it shows British blood, or things of that nature, that's not necessarily a white man. You got to do your research. Got to dig a little bit deeper. Well, but his bloodline did show that, but they didn't show nothing Aboriginal though, because they're not allowed to show you where you are tied into the tribes. It showed Virginia, Delaware. I'm like, that's the Lenape. That don't gotta denote slavery, because while people were on plantations, it was millions of niggas on horse and carriage with 2 hammers walking by the plantation like I wish a nigga would. They had land, they had bread, they had multiple wives, they had people working for them, and their guns and their hammers went off. Y'all need to talk about those people, because they didn't allow themselves to be enslaved. How about that? The fuck is you talking about? You know what I'm saying? What are you talking about?
So you're saying all black Americans aren't entitled to reparations because all black Americans weren't enslaved? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that at the end of the day, the way that this shit is going down right now, because, you know, they you know, even the Americans who wasn't in chains and whatnot, they got declassified. They put them in a fucking dead status. The level of slavery is when they took away their nationality, when they took away their tribes, when they put everybody under black or Negro or colored. So they deserve some kind of retribution as well. We've been lied to. Everybody been lied to the same. Everybody got told that they was a slave when they was in kindergarten. Everybody been, you know, looked down on. So why wouldn't everybody be entitled to some kind of retribution or recourse? You feel me? We could figure that shit out later, but, you know, for the people who did the inventions, for the people who fought the wars, for the people who died, you know, nameless and penniless because they've been ripped off and robbed, and because they got subjugated to these black laws, to these Christian codes and all of that. No, we all deserve a fucking piece of that pie.
So why do you think, to close it out, last question, why do you think black people from, whether it's the Caribbean or from other countries, some of them are angry at the ADOS movement, saying it's divisive, and angry at the fact that, you know, they're actually asking for reparations, saying that, you know, we all deserve that. Why do you think that is?
I just put an article on my gram. I put an article on my Instagram yesterday, and it showed that the Caribbean are fighting for reparations as we speak, and they've been granted some kind of recourse. So, you know, in 2019, with the conditions that we're going through in the Americas right now, descendants of the slaves, you know, PTSD and all of this other stuff that people are suffering, you know, I think that it is imperative for anybody, whether they're from the diaspora, whether they're from the Caribbean, whether they're from Latin America, if it's niggas in Alaska chilling in their igloos, if you see brothers and sisters on the front line pushing, you know what I'm saying? Because they running down, you know what I mean, pushing the issue. You should pull your hammer out and push with them. If you're not gonna push with them, stand to the side. You should not interfere in the affairs of the people who are here, you know what I mean, willing to stand up and willing to go toe to toe to get what's due to them. Because at the end of the day, right now, it's an intellectual, information-based argument. You know what I mean? It's not a physical fight. It's not rallying. It's not like niggas got yellow vest on. It's on social media, Twitter, and social media platforms. It's an intellectual debate, or it's an intellectual argument, and that intellectual argument is beginning to change the hearts and the minds of people who felt that they didn't even have to address it and things of that nature. So my thing is this: if it's not broke, you don't need to fix it. I understand how some people could say that it may be divisive. I think that the language by the brothers and sisters who are steering that ship should be a little more clear, where they're letting their brothers and sisters from the islands and from the diaspora know that they're allies and that they're not going to turn their backs on them, and that when this thing blows over and when action takes place and when reparations are granted, the same way that, you know, brothers and sisters were able to, the same way like Haiti, when they finished their fight, they was able to help others. I think that the brothers and sisters who are emboldened over here, you know, because it's going to build up confidence, and that confidence is infectious.
Why do we have to do all of that? I don't understand that. Why do we have to cater to people's emotions? When I heard about in South Africa, them fighting back, I didn't say, well, what about me over here? I was happy like a motherfucker, like, yo, about
That's
time.
That's what I'm saying. That's
what
I'm saying.
So this is what I'm saying, Red. I don't get how, when I hear about people from over there or wherever getting reparations or fighting, I'm like, yo, that's what's up. Yo, that's what we need to do. But when the shoe's on the other foot, motherfuckers is mad. I'm like, how'd that go? How'd that happen? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't really...
And they tell, I mean...
I'm not familiar with their argument, right? I'm not really familiar with whatever their argument may be. But what I know is it's expected, right? But we over here, we got work to do. A lot of people didn't migrate, or they didn't come over here with their working visas to help fight for reparations. They came to get the fucking bag. That's what people from the islands and from the continent and other people, they came to get the bag and send some money back home and shit like that. They're coming to to embellish themselves in the American dream, a dream that has been furnished by the people who took those shots, for the people who broke those doors down. Like Bobby Hemmett talked about, he was like, you couldn't even see black people in the airport prior to when King and them knocked them doors down.
One more quick question, I'm sorry. Do you think immigration hurts African Americans here in this country like Claude Anderson talks about?
I think that,
and that it has never been friendly for black people over here?
I think that because black people don't have the kind of power that they supposed to have, anything, all kind of shit hurts them. I went to the UN. I shared with the family. We went, me and Blue, I'm going back to the UN. I got invited back to the UN. Me and Blue went to the UN, right? We went to the General Assembly. There was mad flags on the table. I asked the African and the Haitian, who speaks for black people? He said there's nobody speak. There was an American flag. This is during Obama's reign. I said, well, damn, because I peeped how they're doing things. They had a brother from, I think it was from Pakistan, right? He was allocating for 500 visas, right? To bring his people to America because America wanted to do business in Pakistan. I think it was Subways, like there was a corporation that wanted to do business in on their country. They said, in order to broker that deal, you have to grant 500 working visas for my people so they could come over here. So when the people come over here, they already coming over here knowing that they have government support. Then they don't gotta deal with no kind of psychological mind fucks about you come from this, you come from that. They have representatives talking for them in the UN. They'll go to the consulate and talk to them whenever they need some kind of, help. So because we're not in no kind of position to bring no people over here to work in our best interests, we always gonna seem like somebody working against us because we're coming from the standpoint of the have-nots. You understand? So as long as we're in that mind state about somebody always taking our crumbs off the table because we didn't build ourselves a table, yeah, you damn right.
So
nigga.
you blaming it on our mind state?
I'm not blaming it.
That's what it sounds
on
like.
Our mind state. What I'm saying is it's a mind state because at the end of the day, if you were able, black people coming into Ellis Island, they didn't get the kind of support to come and help our own people. So why weren't no niggas at Ellis Island intercepting that? Why didn't you set up no kind of intermediary where when people come to the Americas, you giving them the rundown, like this is what it's gonna be and this is what it's not gonna be. When the Africans was here in the 80s, we was beating them up. When the Haitians we was victimizing them. We was taking their clothes off of them. We was calling them Haitian body order. We was victimizing them, beating them up. Why? Because somebody lied to us the same way that they lied to them. They said, stay away from niggas in America, and then the TV and Tarzan and all of this other propaganda told us stay away from them because all kind of negative things. So we got caught up, huh?
I said be the language.
It be the language. We got caught up in the middle of propaganda where they made us feel like we were better than other people, but then they made them feel like that they was better than us. But at the end of the day, who's the middleman causing all of the confusion? It wasn't us saying all of that. Bugs Bunny was showing us niggas with bones in their nose. The commercials with the flies on the children. All of this stuff was they said AIDS started in Africa. All of this negative propaganda was creating a divide amongst people who, if they came together, they would be stronger. Because we just came from a place in Harlem where a Jamaican owns the business. You understand? He helped me start my business more than 10 years ago. You understand? I don't have those kind of relationships of victimhood and subordination amongst my brothers and sisters from the continent and from the islands. I work with them, and if I see that they're super coons, I stay away from them and I ban them. But for the people who are about that life, because I got Haitians that's more revolutionary than a lot of niggas. I got Jamaicans who bang, they go hard. They got the spirit of Garvey in the Americas. But they tell me this, Red, I'm not here to play. I'm here for the bag. If your people and everybody else want to play with it, do what you do. But I can't, if I get deported back to Jamaica, they're going to kill me. If I don't send barrels of money, barrels of clothes, if I don't take care of them, and if they get word that I'm in the America not on my grind, they're gonna hurt me. That's the same thing with the Africans. If they find out that they sent your ass to the Americas and you're not studying to become a doctor, you're not driving Uber, you're not sending bread back, you're not spending money with your own people, you're not adding in the susu, you will get banished and banned. That's called culture. So why don't we got culture? Why don't we have code? Why have we
quite
not
obvious
established
why.
that?
I know, you want to go through the history?
But we got to establish
where
it.
you want to start?
Well, all right, cool. The curse is over. Get past 2019, my niggas. Have a ticket tape parade. The curse is over. The year 2020 is the new beginning. There's nothing else to stand on. You can't stand on excuses no more. Get on code. Get your shit together. Find your ass an ally or two. Link up. Build a bond. And let's get this thing popping. Straight like that. There's nothing else to talk about.
On that note, we out here. Peace, family.